All right, this is the third message in the series on love in Thursday afternoons. So, God, I just ask that you would just be here this afternoon. I ask that I would hear from you, that I would say your words, God. Just ask that I would convey your heart correctly, God. In Jesus' name. So, I'm going to start out in Matthew 10, verse 29 through 31. Are not 2 sparrows sold for a copper coin, and not one of them falls to the ground apart from your Father's will? But the very hairs of your head are all numbered. Do not fear, therefore, you are of more value than many sparrows. And next I'm going to do John 3:16. For God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son, that whoever believes in him should not perish but have everlasting life. For God did not send his Son into the world to condemn the world, that the world that the world through him might be saved. And next, Matthew 6:28 through 30. So why do you worry about clothing? Consider the lilies of the field, how they grow. They neither toil nor spin. And yet I say to you that even Solomon in all of his glory was not arrayed like one of these. Now if God so clothes the grass of the field, which is today and tomorrow is thrown into the oven, will he not much more clothe you, O you of little faith? So we all know these verses. These are pretty popular verses, but I want to get into not necessarily the meaning of these verses, because the meaning is pretty clear, but more the implications that these verses have in our lives. I mean, the very surface level thing that we can see from all these is that God loves us so much, and he cares about us so much. He numbers the hairs of our head, each and every single one of us. Nothing has happened to us or will happen to us that he hasn't allowed. His hand is in everything that we go through. He sent his Son to live and die just so that we could be with him forever and so that we could talk to him. He even takes care of how we look. So the verse on Matthew 6:28 through 30, a lot of people, I don't know, I feel like a lot of people interpret that as like, don't worry about how you look, your appearance doesn't matter. But it actually later on it says, now if God so clothes the grass of the field, which is today and tomorrow is thrown into the oven, will he not much more clothe you? So God cares about your appearance. He's invested in how you look. He's invested in making you what you're supposed to be. It's not wrong to want to look presentable, to want to look professional, to want to feel good about your appearance, because he made that too. He made us to have an appearance. He made us to wear clothes. He made us to have hair and different things like that. Like, he didn't do that on accident. He made us to be able to see each other and to see ourselves and to have ourselves look a certain way. He cares about that. That's important to him. And it's not some trivial thing that we get caught up in. It is something that we get caught up in, but God is also concerned with it. He's just saying we don't have to worry about it. He doesn't say don't eat. He says don't worry about what you're going to eat. I'm going to feed you. He doesn't say don't look good. Don't worry about making yourself look good, because he's going to do that. He cares about that. He doesn't say don't do anything the next day. Don't do anything for the rest of your life. He says don't worry about what the next day holds, because he has it under control. So the creator of the heavens and the earth pays this much attention to each and every single one of us. He cares about how we look. He cares about what happens to us. He cares to make sure that we're fed. He cares that we're happy, that we feel loved by him, and he created everything. And that's really what I want to get into today. There's so many more things than just these couple of verses list, and just this small list has. He does more every single day than we could ask or imagine. We wouldn't have life if it weren't for his breath in our lungs. Everything that we have comes from him. Every good and perfect gift comes from him. He doesn't just say that he loves us, he shows us in so many ways every single day. Now, I want you to just think about how joyful you would be if someone here on this earth, like a person that you knew, gave you some clothes, like an outfit every day, or gave you a meal every day just out of the kindness of their heart. Think about how much happier, how much different of an outlook you would have on your life if one person every day just did something for you out of the kindness of their own heart. Then I want you to realize that God does millions of things that have just that much weight, if not more, every single day for you. So it's easy to get bogged down in the cares of life, and I do it too. We all do it, but one thing that we have to keep in mind is that the creator of the universe, the man behind it all, cares about us so much, and he does so much for us every single day, and he loves us with the fullness of his heart every single day. His love doesn't dip. It doesn't like ebb and flow, I think is a term. I don't know. But it's not shaky. Like, he has the fullness of his love for us. The fullness of love that we will ever experience is being poured out on us day after day after day. And it's never going to get any more, and it's never going to get any less than what it was yesterday, what it is today, and what it's going to be tomorrow. The variable in all of this is us choosing to notice it, or even just asking to notice it more. We can't, in and of ourselves, we can't do it. We have to just say, God, show me more of what you're doing. And that's not an astronomical request by any means. You don't even have to ask God to do more, because he's already done so much. You just have to ask him to see what he's done for you and feel gratitude for it. And that, in my opinion, that is the secret to joy, because you can't recognize and see every day that the creator of heavens, the one who put every single star in the sky and knows them by name, cares enough about you to make sure you get to work, to make sure you get the food and food that you like, to make sure that you get the car that you like, the job that you like, the clothes that you like, to make sure that you are able to look how you want to look. The creator of the universe, he's got all this other stuff going on, but he still feels like you're important enough. He loves you enough to do all of that for you. He knows you by name. He listens to your every thought. Any words that you speak to him don't fall on deaf ears. He's listening to you all day, every day. And he loves you with the fullness of his capability, which is the fullness, the highest expression of love, every single day. The one who's keeping the world turning, keeping the sun burning, who's keeping oxygen in this earth. None of that would happen without him, but he still makes sure that we're okay. He still makes sure that we know that he loves us. Because if we ask him to show us, we'll know beyond a shadow of a doubt that he loves us. And he's doing that stuff every day. Whether we ask him to show it to us or not, he goes thankless much more than he deserves, and much more than we even notice. He is working so many things for our good, and he is happy when we recognize and are grateful for one of them. And he doesn't consider that robbery. He knows who we are. He knows our hearts. And he loves us so much that just the smallest amount of love that we can give back to him, he he rejoices in it, he loves it, and it makes it all worth it for him. And even the people who go their entire lives without giving anything back to him, he doesn't wish that he hadn't created them. Just the fact that there was a chance that we might choose him makes it worth it all for him. So most of us know all of these verses. A lot of us will have these verses memorized and verses like them, and we know them on paper, but we really need to know it in our hearts. And it's not that hard to really know it in our hearts. Matthew 7:7-11 says, "Ask and it will be given to you. Seek and you will find. Knock and it will be opened to you. For everyone who asks receives, and he who seeks finds, and to him who knocks it will be opened. Or what man is there among you, if his son asks for bread, will give him a stone? Or if he asks for fish, will he give him a serpent? If you then, being evil, know how to give good gifts to your children, how much more will your Father who is in heaven give good gifts to those who ask him?" Just because we don't feel this love, just because we don't have joy every day, doesn't mean we're never going to, doesn't mean that we can't. It just means that we have to ask him. We have to keep asking, seeking, and knocking, and keep in mind that he's a good father and he will give good gifts to those who ask him. It's not he will give good gifts to those who ask him. Because just like any of us, if somebody came up to us asking for something good that we knew was good, we would give it to him. How much more good is he, and how much more loving is he? So if we ask him for this very good thing, we're going to get it. And what greater gift could we ask for than a true sense and knowledge that the creator of the universe cares about us and loves us? Because that's the only thing that's going to matter. Without that, without love, it doesn't. Everything else falls to the wayside. Love is the most important thing, and we can have joy no matter our circumstances, because we know that no matter what happens, our God is in control of it all, and he has our absolute best interest in mind. So it's more than just trusting him in these situations because we know him. We can actually have joy in these situations because we know that if we're following him and if we're trusting in him, that whatever is happening to us, good or bad, it is going to turn us into the best person that we can be. It is going to bring us the closest to God that we can be, as long as we respond to it rightly. So that's what glorying in tribulation is all about. It's not anything besides that. It's not, well, God suffered, so I'm going to power through, or Jesus suffered, so I'm going to power through it, and I'm going to suffer, and I'm going to feel good about it because Jesus did it, and it's going to make me a good Christian. And it's not, I'm supposed to suffer because it's going to make me into a better person, and suffering creates perseverance. That is true, but the real way to glory in tribulation, to have joy in tribulation, is realizing that the tribulation, nothing happens to us without God allowing it, and God wouldn't allow it unless it was going to make us the best that we could be, unless it was going to bring us the closest to him that we could be, unless it was going to show us the greatest expression of love. Because God doesn't have his separate compartments. He doesn't have his judgment compartment. He doesn't have his truth compartment. He doesn't have his love compartment. He doesn't have his joy compartment. Every single thing that we go through, if we're looking to him, and if we are following him and doing what he tells us to do, every single thing that we encounter, whether we deem it good or bad, it is the fullest expression of justice, peace, joy, love, all of that. It is the highest expression. When we go through the worst day of our lives, if we choose to turn it over to God and say, you know what you're doing, I don't, then that situation is God's highest expression of love for you, because it's going to produce something that will make you into who you were always meant to be. And there's no higher expression of love than God letting us become who we were created to be. That's what Jesus came for. He said, no greater love has someone than this, than to lay down his life for his friends. He laid down his life not for no reason, not just so that we could go to heaven and sit in white robes for eternity. He died so that we could be back to the garden, back to what God called very good, back to God and man communing together and giving love freely, of free will, back and forth to one another. That's what God created us for. Jesus laid down his life so that we could be back into that reality. He didn't lay down his life so we could win souls and fill up heaven with more guys to sit in white robes and play harps. He made it so that our family in heaven, so that as much of God's creation could be back to what it was supposed to be like, us loving God and God loving us. And in return, because of the overflow of how much we are loved by God, we just well over so much, and we can't help but spread it to everyone else. So he made us to love him and be loved by him. And what greater calling could we have than to love him? And when we love him and truly know him, who would we be if we kept it to ourselves? I didn't actually write down what verse this is in, but like almost every verse has been in Matthew, and this one's in Matthew too. But I don't know what chapter it's in. So it's in Matthew something, verse 34. But when the Pharisees heard that he had silenced the Sadducees, they gathered together. Then one of them, a lawyer, asked him a question, testing him and saying, "Teacher, which is the greatest commandment in the law?" Jesus said to him, "You shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your mind. This is the first and great commandment. And the second is like it. You shall love your neighbor as yourself. On these two commandments hang all the law and the prophets." So it makes sense that seeing the love of the Father and loving him in return, the greatest commandment is to love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, and mind. It would make sense that loving him is Matthew 22, apparently. So it would make sense that loving him, seeing his love for us, would be the greatest source of joy. It's what we're called to do. The reason that we feel joy in love, the reason that gazing on the Father, seeing his love for us, choosing to give him the little bit that we can, and letting that love well up and overflow into others, of course it would be the greatest source of joy, because we're doing what we were created to do. So we weren't created to do anything else. We were created to love God and to be with God and to increase his kingdom. And we increase his kingdom by spreading his love, because his kingdom is a kingdom of love. It's a kingdom of seeing that God loves us and choosing from our free will to love him in return in the smallest way that we can. And so it's no mistake that that is the secret to joy. God created us to do something, and when we do it, we feel good. It makes sense when you think about it like that. It's the greatest commandment. All the law and the prophets hang on those two commandments. Multiple times, like I talked about the first week, multiple times throughout the Bible, it says, without love, nothing else matters. If you don't have love, you don't know God. If you don't know God, you can't love him. If you don't love God, you can't truly love other people. And so every other thing comes from love. It says all the law and the prophets hang on those commandments. So everything else is from love. When we see God's love and when we choose to give it to him in return, we have peace, we have joy. We become more faithful. We become more kind. We become more good. We have more self-control. I feel like there's one. We become more patient. Yeah, that's another one. But yeah, like when we see God, we want to do what he tells us to do because we know that he has our best interests in mind. And so if he tells us to do something, it's going to be good. God will never tell us to do something that isn't for the good of us, for the good of those who love him, and for the good of his kingdom. He's never going to tell us to do something that isn't for the good of those who love him, including us. He will never, ever ask us to do something, whether we see it as good or bad from our earthly standpoint. If God says to do it, it's good, it's true, it's loving. If God says to say something, that is the highest expression of truth and the highest expression of love. When God gives judgment, when he gives correction, it's for no other purpose than for people to see how they're not loving God just the way they could be, in the hopes of people responding correctly and beginning to love God more and to love God the way he says is loving him. Because love is the way you show love to people is different, and the way you show love to God is different. You can't do something for someone saying it's love, but if it's not love to them, then it's not love. And God is the highest expression of that. Like, you might have one friend who loves, I don't know, like a friend who loves peanut butter or something, but that doesn't mean that you go around giving peanut butter to everyone, because what if one of your other friends is allergic to it and you're like, no, take this. I made it because I'm trying to show you love, but that could kill them. That could be very bad for them. And so love is giving other people what they want, making other people feel loved because God first loved you. And because God first loved you, you also show God love in that way. You can't do something outside of what he tells you to do and say, no, God, this is love. This is love. Like, you probably just didn't understand my intentions, but this is love. You can't tell that to God because he defines what love is. He tells us how to show him love. And if we don't do that, then we're not showing him love. We can't go out and feed the poor and not tell them a word about him and then get back to church and say, that was all for you, God. They don't know it, but we know it, and everyone else out here knows it. But the people who actually need to know it, they don't know it. That's fine. But this was for you. This is love. You should be happy with me. That's not how it works. If we go out and we help people and we say, I'm doing this not of myself, but out of an overflow of God's love. And then we say, we don't even have to say it because God says that he's pleased with us when we do that. So what we really need to do is love God on his terms, not on our terms. And it's not like a my way or the highway type of thing that God has. It's more of, this is what's good. This is what's love. He has defined love, and anything besides that isn't love because it's outside of the definition that he's set up for love. It's outside of what he calls good, and it's not, we don't follow God because he says it's my way or the highway. We follow God because he has our best interest in mind, and if he tells us to do it, it's the best thing for us. So God, I ask that we would love on your terms. I ask that we would not go outside of you to try and show love to other people, because anything short of an overflow of your love is not love. Anything that comes from us is not love, because every good and perfect gift does not come from us. It comes from you, God. So we can't give love of ourselves. We can only give love of you, God. We can't tell truth of ourselves. We can only tell truth from what you've told us. We can't determine what's good and bad outside of you, because anything less than what you call good is bad. So God, I just ask that we would love on your terms, and that we would have joy in knowing how loved we are by you. In Jesus' name.